So, hello everybody and welcome to this course. We will try to follow during the next 4 months two parallel paths regarding the study and development of mobile application for Android and iOS. I really want to welcome you because the number of participation to this course has surprised me. I didn't expect so many people. So thank you for somewhat paying some kind of interest in this kind of discipline, which for sure is extremely interesting in the current market. The course, as you might imagine, is not so simple for many reasons. We will try to put together some practical experience with some more theoretical aspects regarding programming for mobile in its various interpretations. The course is recorded, so if some of you cannot attend a given lecture, you will be able to see it using the web portal of Didattica Polito IT, but I still encourage all of you to participate actively during the lectures. That's for two main reasons. The first one is that people is learning for sure in a more vertical way by attending and listening to what is said here, but basically this could also happen by looking at videotape of the lecture. But people learn much more by interacting with in a peer-to-peer fashion with your companions. So, at least for this reason, you should come here to all lectures. The second reason is basically for me, because for me speaking to somebody in presence is totally different than speaking to an empty classroom. So if I can look you in your eyes, I can try to understand whether you understand me or not. And I can try to rephrase the same sentences in different ways and make me understood as better as I can. Of course, if you don't come here saying, okay, I can attend staying at home, you will prevent this opportunity for me to tailor-made the content for what you're needing. Today we will briefly summarize the content of the course. We'll speak a little bit about why mobile is considered so interesting in the current world. Then we will speak about the syllabus of the course and the general organization and the exam rules. Mobile. If you look around, mobile is filling titles of newspapers. You can listen it in TV many ways. People like to put in their curricula, I'm a mobile developer. Why is there? Well, mainly for an economical reason. Okay, mobile for sure is a big opportunity, is something also funny from the technological point of view. But what has made it extremely interesting to the global world is that it provides something which is totally unique that up to now has not been realized with other kind of technologies. Okay, so the main reason is an economical one. Typically, by using the mobile technology, you can innovate in a lot of existing business processes, changing them and creating new opportunities for companies which perform any kind of work. And mobile is creating a lot of small businesses. Mobile is an opportunity for earning money. It will not last forever. It will soon become some kind of mainstream ability which will be diffused around the world. But at the present time, mobile represents an interesting point of view. The reason we'll see a little bit in details. What makes a mobile device interesting? Well, first, a mobile device is a kind of ubiquitous sensor. When you carry your phone, you basically are carrying a part of the phone capability, also an accelerometer that can sense whether you move, if you walk, if you run, if you are climbing stairs. if you are driving on or at least moving on a car. You are probably carrying out also a GPS receiver, or at least some kind of network interface that can sense the electromagnetic environment and try to figure out where you are now. You probably have also a magnetometer or a gyroscope in some higher-end devices that can tell you whether your device is in any possible direction, its orientation with respect to the space. You can sense the lightness of the environment. This basically was introduced just for regulating the luminance of the backlight of the display, but it can be used to understand whether you are entering a dark room or whatever. Almost every device has a camera. A camera is a wonderful sensor, can detect a lot of things. Of course, since it's a mobile phone, it has speakers and a microphone. And the microphone, again, senses the environment. Some devices also have temperature sensor and some other also humidity and hygrometry. So all of these make it as a mobile station that senses data around you. The fact that you have one device that senses data around you may be meaningless. But if you think that 1,000 million people are carrying their own mobile mostly at the same time around the world, and collectively sense data that can be pushed to some server and they are analyzed, that makes those devices extremely interesting, because you can look at those big data collected in this way and derive a lot of useful information. Note that you don't even have to write any single piece of code for collecting that, because mobile device operating system are doing that already. The big business that Apple, Google, and others understood behind creating mobile device was, I have opportunity to know everything about my possible customer. The fact that your device is mobile, this is the real key point. You can have a camera in your laptop PC, you can have a microphone, you have a microphone there, and possibly many other kind of sensors. But the fact that your mobile phone is with you, that makes it different. Because since you move, it moves around you, and where you go, it collects data. So you can say a lot about, for example, the kind of lifestyle of a person, just analyzing how the accelerometer is moving. If you have some kind of task where you need people entering data in some digital system, then a mobile device is extremely interesting, because it has a very neat user interface, extremely easy to understand and learn, also for children and also for elderly people. The fact that mobile devices are touch-based make them extremely easy to say, okay, I'm just inserting this data. You can carry it where you want. So if you need to make a campaign and collect data about how much some goods is cost in supermarkets or whatever, you take just your device and put your data easily. Most of the time you don't even need to type anything, because you can frame something with your camera and scan a barcode or just taking a picture of something, and all those information will be elaborated later on some server. Moreover, the fact that your device is easy to program makes it possible to control the data that you are entering and check whether it is reasonable or not, so you cannot intercept typing error or any other kind of wrong kind of information as soon as possible. You collect data when they are produced, where they are produced, and immediately you can validate them and send to some remote server. Mobile devices are extremely interesting for reaching customers. Since you carry your mobile phone in your pocket, that becomes an interesting way for customer to company communication. Basically, the idea of instant purchase. If you go to Amazon, on the Amazon side, you look for some kind of product, you have the option instant buy. Just tap here, and I immediately take the money from your credit card. Oh, the good is on delivery here. The idea, what's the idea behind that? That's people, most of the time, wishes something. But if they don't have the opportunity to buy it immediately, then the wish vanishes. And you start thinking about, no, it may be too costly, or perhaps I really don't need it, it's just... So you forget. But if you have the opportunity to say, I want it, buy. Wonderful. Okay, big opportunity for business. Of course, big opportunity for getting poor on the other side. But the aspect which is interesting is that a mobile device can also be a company to purchaser communication channel. You have instant messaging. The platform support company to device communication at no cost, almost no cost. So you can push messages to your customer. Of course, if you constantly push messages, you spam them and you will be easily isolated. People will develop some kind of filter, automatic filter capability, and they will discard the information coming from you. But if you know how to balance the quantity of information that you send with the value of the information, then your messages may be appreciated and can trigger a lot of behaviors which differently would be difficult to trigger. In general, mobile apps can support brand loyalty and awareness. Typically, people give for free some good. Games are a typical example. You download the game, you start playing, and you develop some kind of feeling with the brand connected to the game. And basically, you can start gaming in many more situations than what you would do if you were in front of a standard PC. You can play your games while you are waiting for the bus at the bus stop. You can play for your game in many other situations of life where you don't have under your hands a PC. He is playing something behind the... No, you are not. Business process is changing. Why? Typically, all processes today takes place mostly given for granted yesterday technology. For example, if you need to enroll somewhere, you get perhaps some form to fill and produce some paper and then give this paper to somebody else that can validate it and so on. But this is just a very simple case of business process. For example, if you need to go to some medical exam, the typical process was you go to your doctor and had some prescription for the exam, then you go to the organization, the medical center that provide the exam, they get your blood or whatever is necessary for the exam itself. Then you come there 3 days later or so, and you finally get the result of your examination. Okay? That could be done very differently. You can simply contact your doctor using your mobile phone. You reserve already a position somewhere. You go there, get your blood, and then you could receive via email or whatever kind of mechanism the result. And that's for you. Okay? The basic idea is that typical processes that have been given for granted for many years, decades sometimes, can be totally changed. And this kind of change could create a big opportunity for saving money. Because what once was necessary, because there was no better way of communicating such kind of information, today can be digitally collected and distributed. Mobile technology has a lot of implications for strategic and tactical advantages. for this reason, it's becoming some kind of a need for a lot of companies that have to reinvent themselves in a totally different way. Typical example is the Italian railways, Trenitalia, which are not catching the hype at all. If you try to buy a train ticket using the Trenitalia information system, typically you get something which is web-based that doesn't work, or at least doesn't work as you expect. You can easily see the timetable for the most costly train, the high-speed train. It's extremely difficult to get information about the local trains. It's difficult to make reservation there. You never know for sure whether a train is on time or is late, and many other things. They are simply not understanding that the world is changing. Other companies are, and are developing more and more applications that give for free to their users so that they can reduce the overall cost. Often, mobile programming is connected to the idea of making money. One of the most compelling disruptions created by Apple was the Apple Store. The big idea wasn't the iPhone as such. Of course, the iPhone was nice and very interesting for many situations. But what really made a totally different attitude of the collective world outside was the fact that you could produce your own application and sell it via the Apple Store. Why it was interesting? It was interesting because before, programmers had to find their own target, their own possible customers. And it was almost impossible for them. Because, okay, you have 10 friends that would like to have some kind of application, you can produce for them, they probably can pay a little for it. But if you want to offer your application to 100 more people, then it would cost to you a lot. You have to go each by each and say, are you interested in these? You should buy in advertisement and things like that. By inventing the Apple Store, Steve Jobs had a bright idea. He said, okay, I have already some communication channel with millions of people. I give you the opportunity of using my own communication channel. Oh, is it for free? No, it's not for free. It's 1/3 of your earnings. It's for me. Ah, good. 1/3. Not so bad. Not so well even. Okay. However, that made a change because immediately people said, well, it's not so difficult to create a mobile app. Why do not I try to sell it? Of course, I have the opportunity of selling to the entire world. And such idea was so clever that immediately all the other key players did copy it. Typically, the programmer do not have to worry about product distribution, the problem of returning defective or not wanted products, collecting money, which was one big problem. If you want to sell something in some country far away, how are you going to get the money from the people? Will they send you some banknotes inside an envelope? Probably not. And even if they did, what would you do having a banknote of some kind of country that you cannot change easily? Users, on the other side, have found that visiting store and looking there for novelties and probably getting rating for apps was something interesting, and that did create a good hype for the market. You can have a lot of different business models behind that. Of course, the easiest situation is one-time selling. My apps is costing 10 euros. Okay, I sell it for it, and when you buy, it's yours, you can do whatever you want. Or you can have a totally different model that says, okay, it's free. but you have ads inside. And each time you click an ad, I earn 1 cent. Wow. You have to compare to make it click a lot if you want to really take something. Or you can have the idea of in-app purchase, saying, okay, the application is for free. It just performs some basic behavior. Then I let you see that you could do a lot more. Just pay me €1, please. Or you can have periodic subscription that says, okay, the first month the app is free. Next, you have to pay me €1 per month, or whatever you like. Okay? So all these are different business models. All these are difficult to get really money behind. Okay? So just to cool down the hype, basically, when you develop application, you spend a lot. It requires a lot of effort in making things really nice and working the right way. Probably you can earn something. It's not so true that you earn all what you have spent. Or at least not from that kind of channels. You should try to finance your application, putting together many more actors, the various stakeholders involved by the process, the business process behind your application, and try to get money from all of them. Let's come more technological and say, okay, how difficult it is to design a mobile app? It's not that difficult, but it's not that easy at the same time. Why? Because the mobile ecosystem, you can say, I'm a very big, very good programmer. I've been programming for 10 years. Wonderful. So what could be the hack of doing a mobile app? Mobile app peculiar for many things. What has proven as correct and very good in a desktop environment usually do not work well in the mobile world. What's the difference? Well, of course, one is touch-based interface. That's very different than having a mouse. Why it's different? Well, because the mouse is precise. You can get the exact pixel. That means you can design a button to be extremely small. Typical under Windows, you have scroll bars with 2 small buttons for scrolling up and down. If you have a mouse, it's very easy to get inside and click inside the button. If you have your finger, which unfortunately is large, you touch around there, but you probably miss most of the time the button. Okay, display. Display is a big problem. Why? Usually desktop have 13-inch at minimum, probably larger screens with a higher resolution, let's say 124 by 768 pixel at minimum. Mostly have much more. With a mobile device, you can have devices which have a very small screen, both in resolution, 320 by 240 pixels. That means very little information is there, but also little in dimension. It's just few inches. So that you need to design your interfaces as fitting for those small screens. But sometimes you have huge screens, tablets. 10-inch tablets can be full HD resolution, 920 pixels by what is there, 1080. Okay. So in that case, if you provide the same user interface as in the small device, you see a very little button inside with a very little string put there, and people say, bad, this is bad. Okay. So you need to design your application that it can fit extremely different device size. You usually work at your PC indoor. Your PC is usually placed on some kind of desk. You probably are seated and can work easily. Mobile devices are carried everywhere. You can walk with your umbrella in the rain and try to make a phone call or write a message or whatever. Probably you can access your phone while you are driving. You should not, but it happens a lot of time. So the environment is somewhat constraining you. You cannot pay all the attention to the display because your attention should be used also for walking, for driving, for whatever. You are using it with one hand probably, and you have little opportunity of moving. So all this situation makes it different. Mobile devices are powered by a battery. That battery is often a big problem because it gets lower and lower. At a given time, usually at the best moment, it turns off. Yeah, definitely. This is an awful situation, extremely from game designer. If you start get engaged in some kind of game, that's wow, wonderful, I'm getting stronger and stronger, poof, device is off. So all these things require that you redesign the logic of your user interface and sometimes also of your application so that it can fit with the capabilities and uniqueness of your devices. The other consideration, which is extremely important, is that, okay, it's not so difficult to create mobile apps. So apart you, there are a lot of many other people at least as able as you to provide it, and probably also somebody which is much better than you. If somebody is trying your application and find it not so convenient for some reason, probably they can just go to the market and look for something similar, and they will probably find it. And they will stop using your application and start using the other one. So you have lost the opportunities of getting money. Stop. Also, the operating system is going to play some kind of role in this game. Typically, mobile operating systems have a very different design philosophy than standard operating system. A standard operating system typically preserve the existence of processes, saying once you have started an application, that application is going to run until it requires to run, or you explicitly shut off it. Instead, mobile OS say, okay, my problem is not guaranteeing the execution, the concurrent execution of many different processes. My big deal is guaranteeing the existence of the device as such. So if I have too many applications at the same time, since just one is owning the screen and is interacting with the user, I'm free to kill all the other at any time when I deem it necessary. That means that your application should be designed as killable at any time. If you don't design them that way, you will lose your data. Basically, the user will lose his own data. And that would be bad, because it cannot understand why, and we say, this doesn't work. You have some constraint due to memory, which is getting weaker and weaker as a constraint, because modern devices, even low-cost one, come with a reasonable amount of memory. Of course, we are not in the 4 gigabytes range as laptops and desktop devices, but still we are speaking of hundreds of megabytes, which usually is a fairly good quantity. CPU is again might be a problem. Nowadays, the smallest laptop PC you can buy is a 4-core. 4 core mobile devices exist, but are still in the high-end price. So they are not so much available to the general public. Application undergo a strict life cycle which is governed by the mobile OS. As I said before, the mobile OS is free to kill application as soon as they are no more interacting with the user. And in order to give some kind of understanding of what is happening there, the operating system defines some procedural rules under which it notifies the application that is going to kill it, so that the application has a final chance of saving unsafe data, and then it's killed. The problem is that Android does this in a given way. iOS provides the same functionality in a slightly different ways. That means you have to design your application into branding, into styles, taking of this. You really need to deeply understand such a rule in order to create your application. So we will spend all the relevant time in order to understand. As I said, you have a broad variety of screen sizes, and you should design your GUI, your graphical user interface, to fit properly on all those sizes. And variability is made more complex by the fact that the device can be held in portrait mode, that is, with its shortest side parallel to ground and the longest side being vertical, or can be put landscape, that is the other way around. Okay? That makes different the way contents are organized inside. Clearly, the smaller the available space on the screen, the harder it is to build a meaningful interface, because you have very few pixels to put your information there. And so you have to choose what is the most relevant piece of information you want to put. Touch is extremely interesting because it's natural and direct. You are just saying, I want this, and you touch it, which is easier than moving your hand on the table, grasping a mouse, and having a cursor which is moving on a screen. So this is the big advantage of touch-based interaction. But the problem is that your finger is large, is much larger than the point of the cursor. So when you design buttons or other kind of interactive widgets, you should design them as being large enough to fit your fingers. But if your screen is small, a button can take 1/4 of all the available space. So there is very little space for putting something else. This means that you should conceive your application as a collection of screens that get displayed to the user following some minimum flow. For this reason, you should first make a very detailed task analysis, trying to understand what exactly the user is going to do with your application, and splitting this larger interaction into smaller steps, and having in each step a self-contained activity, self-contained task that provide some information to the users or collect some kind of information collect some information from the user. And then you need to connect all those smaller tasks into a meaningful flow. Take into account the fact that the user can change his mind inside the flow and say, okay, I started doing this, but now I don't want anymore. Or perhaps I made a mistake, so I want to correct, and being able to go back, and things like that. So you should plan carefully the navigation of your app across the various screens, in making it obvious for the user to understand what the application is expecting from him, and making the user aware of what the application is going to communicate to it. And typically, you should provide guidance inside. You might also incur in some kind of connectivity issues. Mobile devices are extremely interesting because they are connected. You usually say they are always on, but that's not true for many reasons. Because you are, for example, you are inside an elevator, there is no much field around, and you can connect somewhere. Or simply, you have switched off your radio because you are in airplane mode or whatever reason. Or perhaps you have just spent your last cent of your credit from the mobile operator and you don't have the opportunity for the next few weeks or until you pay something more to get some extra byte. Okay. So, typically, it's true that mobile devices can communicate to remote server using the internet, but connection can be lost, the speed can be slow, sometimes it's intermittent connection. It's just a question of moving some few feet apart and you go from a situation where you have connection to the one where you don't have it anymore. But if you were going to transfer some data, then you need to design those data transfer in a way that is reliable to abrupt interruption. So that you don't lose any piece of information. You don't corrupt your remote database because you have lost some byte. Typically, if you need some operation that requires uploading data to a remote server or downloading data from a remote server, those activities should happen asynchronously in the background and be suspended and resumed as soon as there is the necessary condition around. And typically, you should provide feedback to the user saying, okay, look, I'm sending this data. Be quiet until I finish. Or if you want to cancel, press here. Battery. Battery is a problem of the device as a whole and not of the application alone. Typically, all the applications running inside a given device drain power from the battery. Some of them drain more power because, for example, if you open the camera is draining a lot of energy from the battery. Or if you are making a lot of network communication, you are draining again a lot of power. But since your application is not alone, the total battery budget is to be shared among many applications which are written by different people that don't even know each other. So you need to be careful in designing your application and have the awareness that your application lives inside a kind of ecosystem and should be respectful of the ecosystem inside. That is, you use energy as little as possible, only when you really need. Because that will make a nice user experience for the user. If your application is draining too much, people will realize it and will start spreading information about the inadequacy of your solution, and you will stop selling it. What's the primary consumption? The display. Your display that has a backlight drains a lot of current. It's not by chance that usually the operating system dims and turns off the display as soon as possible. Then you start again touching and it lights again, and you can interact a little bit and then it dims and shuts down. If you design your application as taking alive the screen all the time, well, that could be useful for some kind of experiencing. For example, if you are designing a car navigator that provides you GPS-based information about the route you have to follow, having the display off, because when you are at a junction, you need to see easily whether you need to turn right or left or go straight ahead. But at the same time, your battery will go down. That could be acceptable in a car if you plug your device and connect it to the general power system of the car. But when walking alone, having an always-on display is not a good idea. It's a very bad one. But then the display is just one of the problems. Camera is another, as I said, and GPS as well. The shorter time you take the camera and the GPS on, the better it is. Again, also, network connection is another source of drainage. The world is complex, and at least you have to face two mobile operating systems. Mobile operating systems that have a lot of similarities. Functionally, they perform almost the same things, but they do it in a different way. They make a different assumption about the user. For example, the iPhone has a single home button at the lowest part of the screen that performs the typical back behavior, but may also perform the switch-on behavior of the screen and other things. If you long press it, you can start opening the task manager and many other situations. On the other side, Android devices either have 4 physical buttons or have none. Typically because starting from Android 4, they replaced the physical button, which were expected to be on each phone, with a logical bar, which is drawn on the screen and reporting 4 sensitive areas that represent the home button, the back button, the search button, and the application button. You should design your application taking care of the fact that it's for that kind of device. That's particularly important for the iOS ones. Why? iOS application, in order to be published, need to undergo a revision process by Apple that controls whether your application is compliant with the guidelines or not. Where the guidelines report something ethical, you should not steal data from the user. Report something which is technological, you should not access undocumented methods. And it's something which is more communicative. Your user interface should conform to some general rules, and so they expect that when you perform some given action, you get some kind of feedback. If your application fails for any of these reasons, it will not get published. Stop. The last kind of problem are the users. Okay? You design your application, you think a lot about it, you try to make it the nicest application ever designed with a lot of features and wonderful, extremely. Then you ask for friends saying, okay, come here please, this is my device with my application, please try to use. And you expect them to behave accordingly, what you have thought. You created a big box there saying, type your name, and you expect them to type a name. You put another box saying, write here your date of birth, and you expect them writing their own date of birth, and so on. And people typically don't do that. Okay? They will use your application in any kind of way possible that you never thought about. And typically the application will crash. You put a button with some behavior behind, they start pressing, for some reason the behavior is a little bit slow, they press it again and see nothing, and press it again, and press it again, and finally the system breaks out because Stack Overflow or whatever. Okay? But you said, no, but you have to wait. Why? It's not written that I have to wait. I pressed, I imagined something happens. Okay? The same is true not only for application, it's true for everything. Okay? Look around the space. It's typically in parks having benches where people can sit. And usually benches have a part horizontal where you sit down and something where you put your back against. Typically, young people will not sit that way. They will put their feet where people usually are expected to sit, and they will put their bottom where people are expected to let their back. Okay? This is a typical way of having a young person sitting around. And the same happens for your application. They will use in any conceivable way, which is far from what you have designed. And the application, most of the time, will crash. Okay? And you, as a programmer, will say, oh, but that's its fault. No, it's your own. Okay? You must design something which is foolproof. I don't know what's the exaggeration of fool in English, but the fullest possible proof should be your application, okay? And you should conceive everywhere. You typically cannot, so what happens usually is that you create something, you put it in the hands of people and start observing and possibly logging and getting a lot of information, and you realize what is going wrong and you will fix it. And you will go this loop many times until you have something which is robust enough. Okay. Given these, what are we going to talk about this course? Well, typically we want to introduce the concept and principle of mobile computing and all what is behind of software engineering foundation, which makes your own process a successful one. But knowing the theory is necessary, but it's not enough. The second aim of the course is to explore both the theoretical and practical issues of mobile computing. That is, I want you to be able to create your own application and have a practical, hands-on idea of what is going on. And we will concentrate on Android and iOS. And I must say 66% Android and 33% iOS. And the reason for this split lies both in the market, in the sense that Android devices cost usually less and so are more frequent in the customer base, and also for a practical reason. You can create Android application using almost any PC. For building iOS application, you need a Mac. We have a lab with 15 Macs. You are so many, so it will be difficult to have all of you all the time using those Macs. So we will need to rebalance the two parts that way. We want to understand the challenges of application design, mobile application design. And we will put a lot of emphasis on portability, usability, maintainability, and resilience. So we will cover a technological part, which will be clearly what is most important for your personal formation. Typically, you are an engineer, you are becoming an engineer. So people expect you to dominate fields like application architecture, lifecycle management, GUI design and implementation, interacting with the operating system, accessing remote resources. Okay? This is the most relevant part. But at the same time, being so relevant in the mobile field, the aspect of designing clever user interface and ergonomic of the processes, we will involve some psychologists that will help us knowing the guidelines for designing successful user-centered application. Okay. I invited Elena Guercio, which is a professional psychologist working at Telecom Italia and in charge of the ergonomy of mobile apps. And she will give us some lectures about how to design an application having the mind in mind. Because the human mind, when looking at something, puts a lot of assumptions and constraints. And if you ignore those assumptions and constraints, you will consider something as working when it's actually not working. For the same reason, we will also have some, during the course, 6 labs sessions, and in those lab sessions, we will have some PhD students in psychology, which will come together and will assist people providing guidance and feedback about what you are designing. Typically, I ask them to say, please come here and say why that is ugly. Okay, so expect to be criticized a lot. It's not done in order to make you feel stupid. Okay, I specifically ask them to perform this way so that you can improve. If you design something with the typical engineering mind, you design something like Politecnico, which is concrete walls, straight aisles. Okay, probably it's extremely efficient, but it's ugly to see. Okay, you need to become able also to dominate the more communicative part. For that reason, they are coming and trying to explain you why something is better than other, and why probably the choices you have made can be revised some way. Okay, the course is going to last 14 weeks, and we will have 4.5 hours per week. Usually, we will make lecture here on Wednesday until 1 o'clock, and in weeks where we don't have a hands-on lab, we will meet again in this classroom on Thursday at the early morning from 8:30 to 11:30. Instead, in those weeks where we have labs, we will meet in LabInf from 2:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Labs are graded. You are going to earn points from attending the labs. Why? Because I really want you to interact. Okay? I think that labs are the way in which it's possible to get the best of the course. I have the opportunity to talk with each of you and try to understand what you are learning and what your difficulties are and things like that. If you don't come to the labs, I have no opportunity at all. So come. On what date there is a labs? Okay. In 2 weeks. On March 21st, we will have the first one, and April 4th, the second. Then May 2, 16, and 30, and the last lab will be on June the 13th. So typically they are one each 2 weeks. You are coming here, you are attending lectures, you are attending labs, and you are also asked, wow, to develop a project. Okay? You will not develop the project by yourself, but in groups. Group of up to 3 people. Up to 3 people means 2 is okay, 1 is okay, 4 is not okay. 5, 6, 7, no. What's the project? Typically is designing and develop a full working mobile application, and you can choose if you want to make it for Android, for iOS, for both. We will provide a list of subjects, and you will be able to make a proposal. You have to talk to me saying, I would like to perform such kind of thing, and if I agree, that will be considered as a possible project for you. In any case, you need a formal acknowledge before proceeding, okay? That's because I want to avoid people coming there and saying, oh, I found this wonderful project, consider this mine. No. No hardware is available for development, sorry. That means if you have your own mobile phone, of course, you can use it, please. I have nothing, I have a tablet here and some smaller phones, but typically not enough for you, so you need to find some kind of solution. Of course, you can develop using the emulator or the simulator in the case of iOS. Probably you can find some kind of device, either asking to some friends of yours or things like that. Grading, just to be aware of what is going to happen. We will give on due dates, that is when foreseen by the student calendars, formal exams, written ones, where you will be asked some groups of questions regarding what we have explained here during formal lectures. You will get from there up to 18 points. That means if you make a totally correct exam, you will get 18. If you get less than 10, the exam is not passed. Stop. Independently of what you have done apart of it. So I want to be sure that you know some kind of theory. Hands-on labs. You will get up to 5 points. How? Easy. We said that we have 6 labs lessons that will be grouped 2 by 2. In each group, you will be given an exercise. You will develop it in the 2 sessions and in the week between, so you have the opportunity to work of your own. At the end of the 2nd session, you will upload your result using the website Didattica and make it available for correction. We will revise your application. When you develop in the labs, you will get feedback by the psychologist, you will get feedback by the technological assistants that will help me looking around for this situation, and myself again if I am able. And we will provide up to 5 points for the overall work. The group project will give you up to 10 points. The group project will be typically provided at the end of the course. You will fix a meeting with me when you will present your project, and you will come and discuss it. We'll show the code that you have created. We will show the running application on the emulator or some kind of device. And I, of course, will ask you the motivation behind that. I will criticize it as necessary, and as a result, you will get a vote. The project can be presented when it's ready. That typically happens later on. Okay? Until when? As far as I'm alive, not too much. Okay. So typically, you should not worry in this phase about the project. You will worry later. Of course, if you want to graduate and you want those scores somewhat, you need. Okay. This is the general rule apart. I forgot something important. Yeah. Just take the last slide. No. Okay. I said written exam. You have an opportunity. Instead of the written exam, you can choose to participate and grade to the hackathon that the University of Torino, our concurrent, is performing on May the 15th, I think. Okay. So, the website is called www.hackunito.it. What is this kind of initiative? Sorry, it's in Italian, but they created it that way. The hackathon is a typical session when you are given some kind of theme and you are asked in a small amount of time, 2-3 days, to produce a working application that will be submitted and graded. Okay. Those people that will enroll in Hackunito and will get a grading of their application, that is, they will not only enroll but actually participate and submit the result of their application, get as a bonus the written part of the exam. Okay. So think of it. Currently, there are 78 teams already subscribing there. If you win, also, then we will arrange some extra bonus. But you should be the winner. Okay. Up to now, there are 425 people. That's an opportunity to get a challenge and compare your skills with those of other people. It will be held from on May 12, 17. We will anticipate all the Android content up to that date so that you reach on that date with enough skill necessary for performing with success in the hackathon. And we will leave the iOS part later on. So, by May the 31st, you have the opportunity to team with other people and enroll on the platform. I will monitor what is going on. Of course, if you notify me that you are creating a team, it's better. I deeply encourage you to participate because it's a good opportunity to test yourself and try to understand what are your real skills and how do they relate to other people that comes with a different training. Okay. Is there any question? Please.
The group will be formed by only us or any other people?
No. You can put together other people. Okay? That could be extremely important. It would be necessary to have a designer, somebody which has easy of creating graphical artworks and design user interface. You can come with somebody which is expert in the content. You will look inside and see what are the themes that they propose. They have to do with mobility and a sustainable city. and making the life inside the town better for everybody. So if you think something which is deeply connected to some kind of aspect, then you probably could be better to having your team somebody who is expert of that aspect, because you need to create something working and fitting reality. Please.
What's the total passing mark? Is it 15?
In order to get the pass from the exam, it's 18. Of course, by summing all what you can earn, you can go up to 30 and cum laude. Okay. Other questions? Okay. So we have still a quarter of an hour. I will use this time to make a small survey with you, because if I'm starting talking about Android, we will stop just in the beginning and we will not be good for, so we will start there tomorrow. Instead, I want to know how many of you have already made some kind of development for mobile devices? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Good. How about object-oriented programming? Okay. Now, given that you know what object-oriented programming is, how many of you consider themselves skilled object-oriented programmers? Don't be afraid, I'm not eating anybody. So some hands are there. Okay, this is a programming course. You need ability and skills in programming. Okay, it's very important. We will not have time to revise the concept behind programming. We will concentrate on how program in Java and Objective-C. Okay, is Java a commonly understood language? Somebody is saying, unfortunately, yes. What about Objective-C? Nobody. How many of you have a Mac? Okay, so I will invite those who have a Mac to take them to the labs so that they can use it for their own purposes, and we can leave the existing Macs in the lab for those who don't have. How many have a smartphone of some kind? Almost everybody. So I will make the reverse. Who do not have any kind of device? One there. Good. Go and buy one. No. Okay. I already uploaded to the website of Didattica Polito IT some slides of the next lectures. So you are able to revise it and come prepared. On the next days, if you have a PC during the lectures, if you have a PC and want to take it here, please do it, because many times it's easier just trying. I'm going to explain you some kind of code and showing what is happening. But if you can, type it yourself and try to do together, because you immediately realize that something is not clear as you expected. We have, unfortunately, a big problem in power supply, because the classroom is not equipped in a clever way, but usually if you provide a charged battery, it can last for about a couple of hours, which is useful for having some interaction between. So, see you tomorrow morning, 8:30 here, and have a nice day.